All right, we will come back from recess for the Community Infrastructure Services Committee. We are going to move to work with the 2016 community grants. So item number 7, I'm going to turn to Kathleen for a brief overview. To you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Chair Galloway-Seelock. We're pleased to be here today to provide committee with the recommendations for the 2016 Community Grants Budget. The Community Grants Budget provides funding for community grants tiers 1 and 2, in-kind facility grants, and travel assistance grants. The 2016 budget recommended for these grants represents an overall 1% increase over 2015, with some exceptions considered on a case-by-case basis. This year, the grant process is somewhat more complex than the previous years, primarily due to 3 reasons. First, on October 26, 2015, Council approved that the Arts Sustainability Fund be retired and that the majority of that funding be reallocated to the Tier 1 grants of the KW Symphony Orchestra Association, KW Art Gallery, and the museum. These funds will be transferred to each organization's Tier 1 base grant in 2016. Second, in addition to this report regarding community grants, Council will be considering Report CAO-15-038 later today regarding the Creative Enterprise Initiative 2016 funding, which includes a recommendation to allocate the remaining $44,000 from the former Arts Sustainability Fund to 2016 Tier 2 grant process. If that recommendation is approved, this amount is in addition to the Tier 2 budget recommended in the report before you now, and will provide a total budget of $166,509 for the 2016 Tier 2 grants. Finally, staff note that the second recommendation of this report, which can be found on page 7-1, is recommending additional funding be provided the Festival of Neighborhoods operating and capital grants, as well as some minor funding also be added to Tier 2 funding. It is very important to understand that this recommendation is only being made if City Council approves the grant reduction outlined in Appendix A of this report. We have 3 appeals today. They're here to speak to their grant request: Kitchener Blues Community, Inc., the Multicultural Theatre Space, and Social Planning Council of Kitchener-Waterloo. Staff are happy to answer any questions, of course, during the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we will deal with very, very high-level questions at this point, and then we'll go to the delegations, and then we'll go through the rest of the grants if we have any questions on those. So just preliminary questions for staff, not getting into detail. Mayor Verbinovic.
Thank you, Chair Galloway-Seelock. Just one question for staff. In terms of the dollar figures that we're talking about, I just want to be clear if in this how the funding that's previously been allocated, and there were 2 components to funding to CEI that were allocated, and I think part of that was Tier 2 related money, wasn't it? Like there was part that went to them as base funding and part that was Tier 2 related. Is that factored into this at all? So that's subject to a subsequent decision, and at that time we would determine what happens to that money at that time? Okay, so that's question.
We're getting head nods, so that means yes.
Yes. No, I saw those head.
I know. I just for the purpose of the web stream. I just wanted to.
Good point.
To make that.
And then I guess my other question to you, Madam Chair, is just from a process point of view. As staff indicated, assuming we go forward, we have to hear all of the delegations, obviously, but depending on what we hear and how we go forward, it may be helpful to actually have the benefit of hearing all 3 presentations before we finally make a decision around grants. I know we've done that in some other years. Have you given any thought in terms to how we might handle that today?
Usually we do deal with it on a one-by-one basis after we hear the delegations, but I think because we have some complexities to this one with open budgets and decisions that have to be made in order for some of those budgets, I think we're going to have to kind of deal with it as a whole afterwards. So I think the approach is going to be that we will hear from each of the delegations. Members of committee can ask questions, but we're not going to do any motions until we've heard all the delegations.
Okay. And then if I can, I have at the time, subject to what I hear today, a draft recommendation I'd like to bring forward.
Okay. I will come back to you at that time. Councillor Zola, do you have questions, high-level questions?
I'm not sure how high level it is.
I just don't want to get into the details of
I never
grants.
get up that high. On page 715, there's no amounts shown for ice program sports like Kitchener Minor Hockey and that. And I know these grants are not paid out of this fund, but should they not be listed somehow on this page, just for the sake of transparency, so that everyone knows what's going to those organizations?
Bob?
Through the chair, the latest amounts were brought forward in a report by Ms. Kugler last October in a report basis. They weren't to be included within this. I can have a discussion with Ms. Kugler to see if that is in the case required, but from my understanding, everything was brought forward last October as an update based on the seasonality in the fall.
Yeah, there's no question about that. I just think that the annual figures should be included on this schedule, which it really tells us about all the other minor sports organizations.
Mr. May has something
So,
he'd like
so
to
through
add to that.
you, Madam Chair, I think it's a good point, and we'll endeavor to do that in the future.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we will move to the delegations then. Sorry, I've got a lot of papers here. We will start with Kitchener Blues Community Inc. with Rob and Bob. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I neglected to say that all delegations will have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Right, and I have many slides, so I'll talk really quickly.
Okay.
Thank you. My name's Rob Berkshire. I'm the president of Kitchener Blues Community Inc., who produces the Kitchener Blues Festival. As an overview, this year is our 16th edition. We're a not-for-profit corporation. We're one of Canada's leading and largest blues festivals. We are internationally recognized. We believe we're the largest single musical event in the region. We have 4 days, over 90 performances, and we engage over 400 volunteers who spend over 8,000 hours working on our behalf. In the community area, we support youth programs, Blues in the Schools. We have a Youth Legacy Showcase, Grand River Blues Camp, all to nurture this kind of music in our youth. We also produce special shows, one-off concerts through the year to keep us in the community. We collaborate with Waterloo Region Tourism, Downtown, Kitchener BIA, Communitech, Koi Fest, Coltrane, and the museum and center in the square. A little history, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I think this chart clearly shows our growth over the years. A nice picture of entertainment from our main stage in front of City Hall. This is a list of some of the international artists who are probably the top performers in this genre of music in the world, and some of our regional artists that we nurture and are proud to put on our stages. And here's one of our local fellows working his guitar, that's Sean Kellerman. We're mostly a free admission operation. We have over 90 performances. We do one ticketed concert, and the rest of the weekend is free. We have 3 large stages, 2 workshops, a children's stage, and we have a bunch of after-festival shows in the bars through downtown Kitchener, and I think in a Waterloo Club past year. We spent $500,000 in 2015 on local suppliers, and our budget for 2016 is $1.2 million of cash and in-kind to produce the festival. Our revenue is provided by sponsorships, both cash and in-kind. ticket, merchandise, and beverage sales handled by the festival. Grants, which, as we've come to realize, are quite variable. And fundraising, I should say also grants are very much growth dependent, which has become a problem for us in recent years. And fundraising, we do some special events and silent auction donations and so on. This is from Enigma Research Corporation does a survey for us, and $7.1 million spent by visitors and $3.5 million spent locally, a total of $10.6 million of economic benefits. And we have quite a, I think you have copies of the Enigma Research survey, and there's some great comments in there from attendees of the festival. 2016 and beyond, we want to return our historic spending levels. 2015 was a special 15th anniversary year for us, and we increased our spend, but we're going to return. We're going to delete our Friday ticketed show. It didn't work for us this past year. We're going to highlight more Canadian blues artists this year, mostly as a result of unfavorable exchange rates when engaging U.S. performers. We've had great success in 2015 in targeting our marketing to out-of-town people, and our survey shows that more out-of-town people attended the festival, so our marketing efforts in that area have been fruitful. And of course, we do need to push for increased audiences and revenues for our sustainability, and increase the visitation and tourism aspect of the festival, which we think is a great vehicle for that, and improve the economic impact. This chart shows the festival budget over the years since 2008, and it shows our growing budget, and the bottom line is the City of Kitchener Tier 1 grant that we received. So we've successfully increased our audiences. We have very strong sponsorship support. In fact, it's growing. We do think we provide significant economic benefit. We have a really strong brand recognition in the whole blues community in North America. We have very loyal fans, and we get great media reviews. Our challenges are critical depletion of our reserves. We are now at the point where our reserves will sustain one more festival. If we have a year this year like last year, we will not have a festival in 2017. US dollar impact is critical, and we're seeing resistance to people buying tickets. They like the free festival. We can't get them to buy tickets. And the depletion of our reserves will seriously impact our ability to secure artists, because we do have to pay them deposits.
If you could just wrap up.
Yep, we're proposing a $30,000 increase in cash ongoing to support sustainability, stabilize our budget, and support the cash flow to enable us to engage artists this year. I would like to thank the council and staff for all the support over the years. Actually, it has been great for us, and we hope to keep going.
Perfect. Thank you very much. There are some questions for you. First is Councillor Singh.
Yes, and thank you both for presenting the information. It clearly outlines the benefit the community has from the festival. And you briefly mentioned the economic benefit as well. As for outreach outside the region, do you guys keep metrics as to how many people from outside the region attend?
I think that's in the Enigma Research, the report. It would tell you the percentage of people that are coming from certain distances away, and we were deliberately targeting to get more people to come from further distances, and I think the results showed that. I don't have the numbers right here, but if we go through the report, we can see that we're reaching more people that are beyond the 50-kilometer radius. And
with the additional funding, would that strengthen your ability to attract further out?
Absolutely. I think we've shown that the marketing plans we put in place last year are driving us in that direction, and we want to continue to drive in that direction, because it's great for us to have people come from out of town for many reasons.
It's fair to say City of Kitchener has been a strong supporter and has done so through funding as well for a number of years. Absolutely. But with the increase in ask, what would you not be able to do if you don't get it? What would it, like you mentioned briefly with your PowerPoint, but specifically what would it impact?
Well, what the board has not finished going through all of the machinations of what we may need to do. But what's clear is we're down to a reserve point where our reserves can support this year's festival. But we need to grow that moving forward so that we can have a festival in 2017. You need to have cash in the bank to make deposits on artists this time of the year.
Okay.
We're starting to book bands for 2016. They need to be paid. And if we don't get that funding going forward, we'll have to look at other cost areas in our base cost model and look for reductions there. And the board has been talking about perhaps shutting down a stage.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I was looking at what we could call page 719. It's part of your letter, where you indicate the grant that you received from the city and the city billing. And looking at 2015, it states that the grant was $40,000, but you received city billing of $18,000. Can you expand on that? Are you indicating that you shouldn't be charged that, or?
Well, my preference is that we shouldn't be charged for that. And I did benchmark with another leading festival in southwest of Ontario. They're supported municipally by a grant of $100,000. They have city staff perform work on behalf of the festival, and they don't receive any billing for that. But I can tell you that the number there was preliminary. We now have an invoice for $21,000 from the city. And I could tell you what some of those items are because I have it right here if you're interested.
Yeah, I would like to know what.
So big pieces are, we paid $4,274 to have the bollards removed on King Street. We paid $1,400 in security at City Hall, which we believe in security, but we have a lot of security. We engage separately to do that. Parks operation, I'm not sure the detail of that, that's $2,700. Custodial is $2,784. Waste management is $1,500, and we paid $4,700 for event staff.
Thank you. Just along those lines, you have some details on what is our page 733, and it deals with the clock tower production costs, and that shows City of Kitchener costs of $10,000. That's part of the 21,000.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you. So just a few questions, if I can, as a follow-up. So right now, our festival has really grown to being one of the largest in Canada, if not North America.
I think it's probably one of the largest in North America. It's probably not the largest, but it's certainly, it's definitely regarded as being one of the largest and one of the best. Okay. Because of the nature and the quality of the acts we hire and so on. We have a great reputation.
No, absolutely, and certainly we hear that, I think, from a lot of the visitors that come in. If, for example, and I know you were asked earlier if you didn't get the additional funding, and it would start impacting on the festival. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how that can start having a bit of a downward spiral, in the sense that you close a stage, you get, what happens to audiences, what happens to your ability to get other grant money and so on.
Grant money is very much predicated in a lot of cases on showing growth modes. So for us to have to cut back in the size and scope of the festival, that would make it increasingly difficult to get more grants at the provincial and federal level. Also, I think if we were to cut back, which we may have to, that wouldn't go unnoticed. People will say, well, the festival used to be 3 stages, and this is how big it was, and this is how many acts we're performing, and now all of a sudden we're down to 2 stages, and it seems to be shrinking. And I think that may also have a negative impact on our sponsors, who really want the festival to be the size and scope of what it is today, because that they're counting on that attendance level and for their sponsorship activities.
In terms of sponsorship, and talking to different events and so on, been hearing different things. What's the experience been for you guys in terms of the ability to grow that, and how do you see that changing in the future?
I think we have seen growth in sponsorship. Last year, we exceeded our sponsorship budget. We have a really strong team now that's working on sponsorships. We are in negotiations with a number of new sponsors. Most of our old sponsors, the week after the festival, tell us things like, we can't wait for next year, and we're in, and we want to participate again. So clearly we're doing things right there with our existing sponsors. And we are getting requests from other people that are looking to get on board. So we're driving that, but that's one element of our revenue stream.
Okay. The last question I have is you touch on the impact of the U.S. dollar, and I guess that's something that has had a substantive impact over the last 2 years, roughly. Wondering if you can just indicate what that has been.
I think last year we had some U.S. funds, and I think we were pretty much covered by the acts that we were hiring from the U.S. Is that right?
Yes, we entered the year with U.S. funds and pretty much covered. So this year we're having to cut back on the actual U.S. acts to limit our foreign exchange exposure.
Because the exchange has changed by what, about 30%?
30%, yes.
So that's a substantive hit for you.
Yes.
And what percentage of your acts would be paid in U.S. dollars roughly versus Canadian dollars?
40 to 50%, I would think, historically. A lot of the really well-known and the higher cost blues artists are coming from the U.S.
Okay.
So it's a big impact from that regard. Getting real headliners that are going to attract an audience, they cost us now 30% more.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Yanetsky?
Yeah, thank you. You indicated that from earlier questioning that this is probably one of the biggest festivals throughout Canada or North America, blues festivals. And would you say it's one of the biggest festivals here in Kitchener-Waterloo?
I think so.
Okay, I would agree with you too, so just need a confirmation on that. In regards to the American dollar, how many of all the audience that you have that comes here, how many would be coming from the States in terms of people coming to see acts as a percentage figure?
Do you know that, Ron? 6%.
6%. And with the Canadian dollar being as it is, this is really in favor of the Americans because they're getting their money's worth in terms of getting more dollar compared to our dollar, so that you probably could get more people to come up here to enjoy it too. Would that not be the case?
Yes, I would agree. I think what brings them here, and I've talked to American visitors to the festival, what brings them here are entertainers that they want to see. So I know we've put certain entertainers on the stage, and then I've bumped into somebody from the U.S., and they'll tell me, I came here because that guy's on the stage.
Right. And it's free too.
There's that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, can you just repeat a couple of the numbers that you were talking about with the costs on that $21,000? One was bollard removal. I was a bit interested in that.
The report I have in front of me says traffic road closures, bollards, $4,724.30.
$4,732?
$24.30.
Okay. And the other one was security.
Security is $1,463.03.
Okay. In your comment about the security was that you hired your own security.
We do.
Okay.
So
have you ever asked what this additional security cost was for?
I think that the city perhaps puts some people out on the street, but we have people out on the street, so.
Okay. All right. I think that might be a question for staff. Okay. And you said event staff also participates. You had a $2,700.
No, $4,699.45.
$4,600. Okay. All right. And that's event staff that help set up the venue?
I think mostly our volunteers set up the venue, but there's some pieces of activity that Kitchener people do, like the garbage and in the park and some custodial things. And I don't have a breakdown of exactly who was doing what, so it would be nice to know.
Okay. So my understanding is that the $30,000 you're saying would deplete your reserves. What are your reserves at now? I was looking for those figures in the report, and I didn't see them, so.
Our reserves now are at about $50,000. We normally like to have about 10% of our budget for the reserve. That usually sustains us through the winter for ongoing operating costs, and then deposits for artists until money starts coming in for the next year. So we're about a little under half of what we should be.
Okay. You said that you were in your presentation that you're planning on looking towards more Canadian artists and higher profile Canadian. Do you see that will reduce your costs?
Well, yes, because of the issue is that the American artists now all of a sudden cost us 30% more than they did last year.
Right. So are you saying that you'll see a 30% decrease in your costs for artists?
No, I'm suggesting that the artistic director is looking more closely at Canadian acts in order to mitigate the risk of that exchange rate.
Okay. Do you have a sense of how much that will reduce your costs?
I don't.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I have some more questions for staff later.
Councillor Marsh?
Thank you. So just a question about the Clock Tower stage production costs on 7-33. You have a video production line item that in 2015 was $17,000. Can you tell us, is that a video that is used? What is the video for, and is it publicly accessible?
I can explain that. If you go to either the main stage or the Clock Tower, because it's such a large venue, you'll see large screens. And they're projecting images of the live performance on the screen, so people further back can see what's going on.
That's what that cost is?
Yep.
Do you also record it and then?
No.
No.
No. Most artists don't want either the audio or the video recorded.
Okay. And in terms of fundraising for the summer festival, have you ever considered holding a ticketed event at a different part of the year?
Yes, and in fact we do that. We have a launch party in April. That's a ticketed event. It doesn't raise a lot of money for us.
Well, that would be a good way to, try and use that to.
So last year it broke even basically, but we do view it as a marketing activity regardless, so a break-even marketing activity has some value to us, but we're starting to look at that more in terms of how do we reduce the cost of that event to generate some more revenue.
Yeah, good, thanks.
Councillor Gazzoli, did you have more questions of the delegations? Questions of staff? Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That's all the questions that we have for you.
Thank you.
Thanks. We will turn to questions of staff now, specifically to the grant we're talking about, the Kitchener Blues Community Incorporated. So, Councillor Gazzola.
I just wanted to ask staff about some of the comments that the delegate has made. And is every organization that deals with the city, is everybody treated the same, or what kind of rules are there for those costs? Are there discounts for them, or there's a substantial amount of money here involved that the organizations are being charged by the city, and rightfully I think they're asking should they be incurring those costs, like moving the bollards and that.
Renata?
Through the chair, those in-kind costs that are charged to the organizations, we can't speak to those. That is done through special events, which is through the Economic Development Department. They would have to answer the question related, is everyone treated equally, and what the costs are that are passed on. There are many grant events, and the in-kind expenses are shown in most of them. So I would think most of them are passed on, but I couldn't speak to that. That special event staff would have to answer those questions.
Well, it's a question I'd like to see some answers to, because I think this not only affects this organization, but it affects a lot of organizations, and it makes it tough. There are a lot of things that costs, I think, that they incur that they would think would be part of just using our site. So don't know if we can get.
Maybe we can try and get someone from special events down here over the next little bit as we deal with this overall. Yeah, Mayor.
Sorry, Chair Galloway-Silak, I'm just trying to help here because this is an issue that has come up. Councillor Gazzola's right with other groups in terms of the bill backs and the extent of them. And quite frankly, it's a challenge for special events as well, because it actually all comes out of operations in terms of and that's where we would have to really go back to a lot of that, especially around the road closures, the bollards, all that stuff. I mean, security and I guess bill backs around staffing, special events can answer. But it is something I think, if we're going to be in the event business, it's a discussion for another day we're going to have to look at.
Okay, maybe we can still try and get someone down here to give us some context around it over the next hour or so as we deal with some of this. Councillor Fernandez, you haven't queued in, but you said you had questions of staff?
Yeah, actually my questions were no different than Councillor Gazzola's, and I think that is something that we need to get our heads around, because if we want to have special events, we have to figure out a way to not handcuff these organizations who want to do the events, who provide some of their own staffing, like the security. So it's not really a question, except that
we'll get there.
Yeah, we need to get there.
We'll get there. Hopefully by the end of this discussion, we can get someone here. Okay, so we're going to move on then to the next delegation, which is Majdi and Pam from the Multicultural Theatre Space. Welcome.
Chair Galloway-Silak, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, after founding and then managing Empty Space for almost 12 years now, and after working in a full-time capacity in the performing arts industry here in Kitchener for my entire Canadian life, I can attest, as I am sure many of my colleagues and friends who are here know and agree, that making art in Kitchener, Ontario isn't the easiest of things. It comes with several challenges. One example is performance space. Performance space in the city is virtually unavailable. The Registry Theatre is running at capacity. Our community needs at least 2 or 3 Registry Theatres. Both the Conrad Center and the Center in the Square Studio are prohibitively expensive to use. These are equipped and custom-made theater venues that are currently, as far as local theater is concerned, going to waste. Empty Space is homeless. Many other local theater groups are homeless. Last September, and with enormous cost, we outfitted additional venues at the museum, the Blair Rehearsal Hall, and at outdoor locations. And we ran an astounding, very well attended, and incredibly successful Impact Festival for the 4th time. The bill for the festival, however, came at a much higher cost than we originally planned for. Add to this a couple of unsuccessful grant applications, and we are now working very hard and with much difficulty to carry on with our initial plans for 2015-16 season. It's been 12 years, and it's time for Empty Space to refresh its leadership. I feel very lucky and confident to hand the reins to our Lou Region native and resident, Pam Patel. In this time of transition, however, the organization is more vulnerable than ever before. We stand before you today to request an ongoing increase to our operating funding. Pam?
Empty Space has grown from producing one show every year to bringing culturally and socially relevant work from across the country and around the world to our community. We've challenged the preconceptions of theater to create, produce, and present work that is accessible and affordable to a younger audience, including students, and to low-income families by creating a space for Indigenous, immigrant, refugee, and marginalized voices to be heard. Empty Space Productions have toured nationally and internationally, and our Impact Festival has now become internationally recognized by theater creators after 4 iterations, creating a nexus of exchange between local, national, and international artists. For 5 years, Empty Space has partnered with the YMCA to create the Newcomer Youth Drama Program. Empty Space has also collaborated with the Center for Community-Based Research numerous times to develop pieces which speak to issues of mental health, faith, and social justice, providing alternate perspectives to social workers and policymakers. We have faced, and still face, many challenges. We are attempting to provide more activity, employ more artists, and engage more of our community members with essentially the amount of funding we had 5 years ago. And now with Kitchener expanding more than ever, we, Empty Space, feel we are equipped to respond to the changing face of our city. For example, the growth of the tech sector. Arts and technology complement each other, and we see Kitchener as the best grounds for exchange. This is why at this past Impact 15, our conference was about technology and social media in performance. It's by finding these bridges that we realize the ecology of the cultural landscape that we live in now. There is a need for what Empty Space is doing in this changing community, where we're embracing more and more newcomers each day, whether they're here to work for a tech company or they're a refugee seeking a home. Empty Space is creating theater that promotes cultural sensitivity in this place that we want people to call home. As we transition into a new chapter, we have goals to continue nurturing artists like myself, who, by the way, probably would have been living in Toronto if it wasn't for Empty Space, incubating new and original work that tells stories from our community, providing programs for marginalized and newcomer youth, raising the profile of the Impact Festival nationally and internationally, and continuing to create, produce, tour, and present theater of the highest caliber.
If you could just
As we
wrap up.
grow,
Thanks.
As we grow into a mid-sized theater company, we realize the only way we can move forward is with more support from the City of Kitchener and an increase in our annual operating funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a few questions already for you. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation and for all the stuff that you do with your organization and the value you bring to our community. The questions that I'm looking at here is, in the report, I didn't really see anything about how the impact of your events are, like attendance-wise. How's your attendance at your events? Like, do you have figures for that?
Yeah, you have in your a statistics sheet that shows the numbers for not this current year, but the last completed year, which is not a festival year. And the attendance for a festival year would be around double, exactly double that figure. So we're looking at 7,000 attendance in total, including the shows we do locally and on tour.
It's on page 7-55, I believe. It shows there for 2014-2015,
Okay.
the total attendance is 2,288.
Okay, so this total is a non-festival year. So you do your festival every other year, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Can I ask whether, I mean, why were your costs last year exceeded more than what you had budgeted?
Well, actually, our costs didn't really exceed what we budgeted for. It's actually our revenue has came short. And this revenue is primarily because our operating cost was offset by a major staff member was offset by a Trillium grant, which finished.
Okay. All right. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, thank you. And similar to Councillor Ioannidis' comment about how much you guys do contribute to the community and also how much you're able to accomplish with the limited resources. It's commendable. But from your presentation, you referenced two things, obviously, one of which you're here for additional operational funding, so more cash resources. But the other was that you said there's just a substantial limit of theater space, stage space. Which one would you say is more paramount for your ongoing success?
Well, what's I think is most paramount, because it doesn't concern empty space alone, it concerns the entire theater ecology in the region, which is making both the Center and the Square Studio and the Conrad Center for the Performing Arts managed and accessible in the same model that the Registry Theater works.
Okay, good. Irrespective of how the decision is made on your application, I think that's a good point that you made, and that's a continuing conversation that needs to be had with the organization, City of Kitchener, as well as our other partners in the community as well. So good. Thank you.
Mayor Verbanovic?
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming in and for all the great work that your group does in the arts. My question to you is, I noticed in 2010 to 2013, you received some funding from the Region of Waterloo Arts Fund and then didn't pursue that in the last 2 years, and it doesn't look like you're going for any of it actually in the last 3 years, and then I'm not sure if you're looking at it in the future. Can you, do you know, did something change around that fund that you can't access it, or?
Yes, we were kind of informed that we've outgrown the Arts Fund and that we can't go back to the Arts Fund every year because our Impact Festival is becoming becoming part of our mainstream activity year after year, and that's where or every 2 years. So we accessed the Arts Fund when we were able to, and we were advised that probably we should not come back for the Impact Festival.
Okay.
With that said, however, there are certain projects, for example, collaborating with Neruda to create a piece for Quiltroon, that we might apply for, but they're on a much smaller scale.
So it'd be project-based.
Yeah, and what we're doing is actually we're sending our proteges, our artistic associates, like Pam, like Nada, like Heather, we have that we kind of send them to the Arts Fund where we nurture their project, and they have been very successful in getting this money. So we're kind of incubating work that is being supported by the Arts Fund.
Okay. And so my second question and last question is, in terms of the requests that you have, if you can talk a little bit about what would happen if you didn't get any of that funding, or what would happen if you only got some of it? How would things look different?
Well, there is 2 years ago, I think, we have been given the 20,000 annual support, and it was made in a one year only support. And when we came back then, we were sure that this amount is what we need as ongoing support. Mm-hmm. And at this point, if we do not get the increase in funding, our operating is going to be very difficult to sustain this year, particularly. Like, we will end up with a larger deficit, and we're going to have to carry this deficit to the next season, and it's going to be a very hard, heavy burden on the organization for the coming few years.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Councillor Gazzola?
What is your fiscal year? Are you in a calendar year? I'm trying to equate your statements here showing budget and requests. So are you in a calendar year? Or, but if I look on page 751 and the outside column says total budget 2015-2016.
That's July
is
1.
That for next year?
July 1 to June 31st.
So you're not on a calendar year?
No.
Which makes it difficult to relate as we're on a calendar year. So I noticed there's a lot of large differences in looking at your revenue for this coming year. For example, Heritage Canada, if I'm reading this right, one year where you received 25,000, and this year you're looking for 80,000.
This is because of also the festival is a biennial. So if you look at the year before, it was 60,000. Canadian Heritage currently provides us with 25,000 in an off-festival year for our presenting series. So that's to support us presenting 3 plays in a given in a non-festival year. And in a festival year, Canadian Heritage provides 50,000 for the festival and 25,000 for the series. So 75,000 in a non-festival year and 25 in a festival year. And this will continue to fluctuate.
So I see these similar figures when I look at Ministry of Tourism and OCAF, whatever that is.
Ontario Cultural Attractions Fund.
So are we going into an off year or a full year?
This is the festival year 2015-16, which is from June 2015, July 2015. The festival is in September 2015. So this year that we're in now and that we are requesting the funding for from the City of Kitchener is a festival year.
So, and it's already over?
It's not over. We're in the middle of it. We still have 6 months to go.
Okay. What kind of attendance do you get to all your functions?
To all our what?
To all your...
All of our events.
Functions.
Yeah.
It's around 3,000 visits in a non-festival year and 7,000 in a festival year. And this fluctuates a bit when we do more touring or less touring.
Well, you call them visits, okay?
Visits, yes.
Yeah. Now, if I compare that to the group that was here before, Blues Festival, their numbers are 20 times that.
Yes, of course, because the Blues Fest.
And yet your grant is a third of what they get. So how do we equate that?
The Blues Festival is, as we just heard, is one of the largest in North America and is a free festival, and it's an outdoor festival. Impact Festival is a ticketed festival and is an indoor festival in venues that seat anywhere between 50, 60 people to 150 people max. So they're totally different creatures, and they're apples and oranges.
Okay. We've recently come up with a new approach as far as the center and the square is concerned. Have you had any discussions this year since we've changed what we're looking for there? Have you had any discussions?
Yes, actually, we got a quote from them to use the studio as an impact venue for 2 nights, one production performing over 2 nights, and the quote was over $10,000. And then we found it cheaper to outfit the museum into a theater than renting that hall for 2 nights. And mainly it's the cost of the labor, not the rent. The rent was $700, and there was $10,000 in labor cost.
Thank you.
Councillor Marsh?
Thank you, Majdi and Pam, for coming in and speaking to us. I've had the pleasure of being involved in several of your productions and seeing several of them. So thank you. I want to ask you, what would the $12,000 in-kind request go towards? What are you asking for?
Our urgent need is for the cash amount, and our in-kind request is our wish. Our wish is that this money will go into mail outs, into lamp post banners, printing, some tech support in outdoor activities like for the electricity, generators and things that, risers and things that the city would have once we want to use things like that in that. But that's our kind of wish, that we could use this kind of amount from city services.
Mm-hmm. As part of the Impact 15, there was at least one, I think more than one, outdoor performance. So would you be looking at doing additional outdoor performances as part of your regular stage productions outside of Impact?
Yes, for a few years now we've been putting up shows in outdoor venues because some shows do require outdoor venues, and we always partner with Flush Inc. Productions, who do a whole evening walking around the city, and usually our guests enjoy that a lot because it gives them an opportunity to explore Kitchener while watching theater. This year we had unfortunate misscheduling, so after we had our show, one of our presentations scheduled at Victoria Park, the city informed us, well, the city didn't inform us. We discovered by mere coincidence that the park was double booked. So we had really to move quickly and find an alternate venue, which happened to be at the University of Waterloo campus, and that came at quite also some cost to do that. So we do wish to come back and do work at the Victoria Park and at other outdoor city facilities, but we hope that this kind of mistake doesn't happen again.
Well, of course, yeah. Mistakes happen, but I'm sorry to hear that happen. Thank you.
Councillor Davey?
Thank you. Thank you for coming in your presentation. I just have a question regarding the statistics on page 7-55. I noticed that many of the locations are not only outside of Kitchener, but outside of the region. And it looks like approximately half of the attendance figures are actually outside the region as well. Is that correct?
Half the attendance is what? Sorry, I don't have the page.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm just looking at the page 7-55. I want to make sure that this is capturing all of your attendance. And it shows 2,288.
This is, yes, right.
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct, yes.
Okay.
That's also reflecting a year in which we toured one of our major productions.
Okay.
Yeah, so this attendance reflects not only local attendance, but around the region and also nationally.
Okay. So I'm seeing a few from Burlington and Nova Scotia, et cetera, University of Guelph. Do you get funding from other municipalities than us?
Yes, we do get funding from the City of Waterloo and the City of Cambridge.
City of Cambridge, okay. So I guess my concern is if we increase the grant, being that it looks like close to half of your performances are outside of the region, how would we ensure that our dollars don't go towards that? Because then you have to understand from our perspective that's a poor investment.
Yes, we are located in Kitchener, and all the theaters that we operate in are in Kitchener. They happen to be in Kitchener, in the local area. And our Impact Theatre Festival is a downtown Kitchener festival. All the venues, or most, like the idea is that all the venues are within walking distance from the downtown core. So that's the major festival hub, and the festival is our biggest activity. We will continue to create shows and tour around the region, Ontario, and nationally, and also we pursue international activities, but when we do that, we will be exporting the Kitchener cultural product to the world.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Etherington?
Through you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Majdi and Pam. It's good to see you. I think you should be in costume. That would be more appropriate. But that's just my opinion. I wanted to say that I've got a number of questions, but I wanted to say, as a supporter of empty space, I can speak to the excellent standard of theatre provided. And I just wanted, before my questions, to reinforce the comments from Pam about cultural sensitivity. I can't think of a time when we would more be in need of cultural sensitivity than this coming year. And so my questions to Majdi or to Pam, when you look at your audience, what do you get? What's the breakdown of people from Cambridge, Waterloo, Kitchener? Do you have any idea?
I mean, we try to take surveys at the door, and I mean, we sort of tried that last year. It's taken a little while to get in the habit of doing those kinds of statistics. I think in general, a lot of our audience is from Kitchener and Waterloo. Yeah. It's difficult getting folks from Cambridge to come see productions here. I know that last year, with our season of Indigenous theatre, we actually were able to reach more audience from Waterloo because we were specifically trying to build a relationship with the Indigenous community there, and there were a lot of people who were affiliated with the Aboriginal school and association at University of Waterloo.
Right. The funding from Cambridge, I noticed, is practically non-existent. Am I correct? $500, is that?
Now it's 1,000, so it was increased by 100%.
The funding from Cambridge is actually for the Newcomer Youth Program.
Okay. And Waterloo? What do you get from Waterloo?
We got 6,000 in operating, and we received 3,000 for the Impact Festival 2 times in a row. And actually, 6,000 in operating and 3,000 in project we have been receiving for the last 3 years.
Okay. And one last question. I mean, everyone around this table faces a huge list of requests for more money. How would it sit with you if you had an increase over 2 years instead of 1 year?
This is one way of looking at it. This year, we are fighting very hard to keep our year end in the black. Yeah. We are in most need for money, but our hope that we would increase the percentage or the amount that we receive from the city of Kitchener for the coming several years. So we're looking at an ongoing increase that we receive now. So that's one way of, it'll be better than none. Like receiving this amount over 2 years will still help and will definitely get us to our goal 1 year later.
I feel like what we're really facing here is growing pains, because we're growing as an organization, and now we're facing the challenge of sustainability, which so many organizations do face all over Canada and the world. And so I guess our priority right now is how do we build the organizational capacity to continue and to grow what we're already doing?
Okay, thank you. And I agree completely with Councillor Singh that at some point as a council we have to address this problem with theatre space. Thanks for your help.
Councillor Fernandez?
Thanks for coming in and presenting your case. It's so hard to try and balance the desires and the ability to create more cultural, lively atmosphere in our city, but with the knowledge that there are other things that are really, really important. One of the things that you talked about was the performance space. And when you said the number for the centre and the square, you were wise in informing us that some of that was the cost of the rental, but the rest was the cost of labor. Have you been able to have discussions with the Centre in the Square about that labor cost? Was there any negotiating on that at all?
Yeah, we have been working with the Centre in the Square management very closely with the former management with Jamie Grant, who was a very good supporter of Empty Space, and with Sandra Bender and her staff. I think it's the IATSE, like it's the union cost of labor. And I remember Jamie Grant telling me that, I tried to separate that venue from the rest of the building, but it's probably not possible. Now, I heard that another opinion that says it's possible, and I think that if there is a political will to somehow, the only way it seems for this venue to work is to be separated as a venue from the rest of the building, so that this venue stops being a unionized house, because that's where the cost is coming, is the cost and the way it works with the technicians union. And I think if this city wants to do anything about that venue, my understanding is the best route to go is to find a way, working with the Centre in the Square and with the legal system in this country and this industry, in a way that will separate, because the moment this room will stop being, like the technicians in it would stop being unionized, that's immediately right there the solution, because managing it as a whole with giving us the right to bring our own technicians like we do at the Registry Theatre will instantly drop the cost way down.
Thank you. That was very enlightening to hear that another way of looking at it. So if there was a way to open up space like that, and the Conrad Centre you mentioned as well, do you think that you would have the ability to offer enough performances that would offset your costs? Because every performance costs you money, right?
Yeah.
But would you be able to generate enough revenue if you were able to help offset that?
Yeah, this is a broad question that there's no way I can answer like this, but I could refer the city to the model of the Registry Theatre. This is a venue, it's medium, small size, it's owned by the city, it's run by a non-for-profit, and it's breaking even, and it's providing an incredible service to the arts community. And we would love to stay there at the Registry and do all our shows there, but to book the Registry now, you need to book it at least a year or more in advance. And once we did that last year, we ended up looking for shows that fit in that time slot that we booked last year, which isn't very efficient, because we usually grab the opportunity to bringing in shows that are on tour, that are traveling between Toronto and London or to the US, and we grab them on the way. And we want the flexibility of a place that we can, that's available, that's more available. So, literally, the model of the Registry is how could the Conrad Centre, which is a theatre that was built for the theatre community, by the community who believed that the local theatre in Kitchener-Waterloo deserves a beautiful venue that's custom-made and that's equipped for theatre, how could that venue become a home for the symphony? And the fact that this venue be a performance space becomes secondary. So number one becomes something else. And the cost of running that venue there is more than renting a venue in Toronto. A similar size venue in the heart of Toronto costs less now than the Conrad Centre.
Okay. Thank you for educating not only myself, but a number of people on this. I think it's going to beg a bigger question from me to staff. Thank you.
Councillor Yurnatsky.
Thank you. And I'm going to continue on Councillor Fernandez's question on that, using the negotiations you're doing with Senator Square. With the Conrad Center, is it the same thing as union issues that are there, or is that, I didn't think they would have that, but they're just asking too much?
No, the center, the symphony, the Conrad Center has no union issue. The issue with the Conrad Center is an institutional issue. It's a big institution that their priority is not to manage a theater space. Their priority is to make music and offer their programming. So managing a theater space becomes a burden to them, and for them, and becomes also a financial burden. We are always in contact with the symphony, and last year we have agreed, after we brought together about 6 or 7 arts organizations, and we agreed with the symphony for a block booking deal. So we managed to go in there for our Impact Festival with slightly reduced prices, actually quite reduced, based on the fact that all together in the community we managed to book a large number of weeks. The second year, when we came back to negotiate that same deal, unfortunately, the theater community couldn't come up with the same amount of weeks, couldn't guarantee. And the reason the theater community couldn't guarantee, because despite the reduced rent, still the cost of labor and the cost of putting a show there, despite the discount, the block booking discount, was still too much. I'll give you a very simple example. The symphony charges us for a door person at $20 an hour. I don't make $20 an hour. Like, I wish I could go and open the doors and close the doors at the symphony. So why would I want to pay $20 an hour for a door person at the symphony? Because that's their structure and that's how it demands. Well, I have 100 volunteers who can sit at that door day and night. It's the organizational structure that hinders the capacity, while at the registry, the format is very different. We get the key, we rent the venue, we pay the rent, we take the key, and we bring our staff, we bring our volunteers, we bring our technicians, and that saves a lot of money. And we are billed for consumables, or if we break something, we pay for it. But it's a different organizational structure.
Okay, and I appreciate those answers, and they're very, very good. So, I mean, the symphony comes here asking for money because they're always short. Now, if the two of you could work something out, it'd be a win-win situation, because I'm gathering that you don't want to pay that higher rate because you can do it by volunteers, which is totally reasonable. Yet, on the other hand, that building is sort of sitting empty for those time spots. Is that correct?
That's correct. And when we negotiate with the symphony, what we've often told is go to the city, let the city subsidize your use of the space.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Councillor Zola, I have you in the queue. Is that for staff? Okay. That's all the questions that we have for you, Majdi and Pam. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Councillor Zola, question of staff?
Yeah, it's just, I remember with this organization where they have an on year and an off year. Do we set up the grants in that way, or is it an equal grant year after year?
Renata?
Through the chair, a number of years ago when we changed the grant system, they had received additional funding for impact separately, and when we merged them into a Tier 1 organization, the impact grant was $10,000 a year, so they received an additional $5,000 a year for operating to cover that
every year.
Every year, instead of receiving a one-time grant every other year, because they were no longer eligible for that type in the new structure.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions for that one. I just want to bring everyone's attention to time. We're rapidly running out of it for this committee, so just keep your questions succinct, and remember that just try to ask the questions that are going to help form your decision at the end. With that, we have our last delegation, which is Trudy and Barbara from the Social Planning Council of Kitchener and Waterloo.
Welcome. Thank you, Madam Chair, councillors, Mr. Mayor. I'm speaking to you today, joined by other board members, staff, and supporters, as a community member and as a volunteer. Someone who has the privilege this year of chairing what we have newly named the Social Development Centre, Waterloo Region. When I read the recommendation of city staff to cut and, by the end of next year, eliminate our core funding, my first response, understandably, was alarm, because this funding means a great deal to our organization, the one I have come to think of as ours. And losing that funding would put in considerable jeopardy our ability to continue to operate. Since this grant is the only core grant that we receive, the only one that makes it possible to support our core operations, there are a few sources of such grants available for organizations like ours. Yes, we also support our core work through memberships, donations, and fee-for-service contracts. But building these bases and obtaining these contracts takes time and core resources. Yes, we continue to be successful in our bids for project funding, but not only is this kind of funding precarious, it typically includes no money for overhead and certainly no support for our core work of providing information services to this community, and particularly its most vulnerable members. As I took another and closer look at the staff report, however, my response turned from alarm to puzzlement, since the report appears to be taking a position for which there is no evidence. Despite the meetings we had with staff and the supporting information that we provided with our application, there's no indication in the report of who we are or what we really do, or any evidence of community input into that recommendation. Further, there's no reference in the report to what we were actually requesting funding for. In our application letter, we made it clear that the city's funding is not used to maintain our community information database. Rather, we use the city's annual investment primarily to provide community support services and to develop those services in response to changing technologies and community needs. It is this work for which we requested funding, so that we can continue to build our integrated service focus and our unique hands-on approach to providing support to Kitchener residents. We also asked for funding for a part-time social planner to help convene the community forums that engage wide public discussion on issues that community members have asked for more opportunity to explore. Yet there's no reference to this in the report. The community has told us year after year how important and valued our service is. And independent audits and studies have confirmed this. We receive continuing feedback and advice from our community reference groups, Poverty Free KW Action Group, Disabilities and Human Rights Group, and our new Community Social Planning Council. All this and more is evidence from the letters of support that you have before you. For close to 50 years, we have been giving value for money, leveraging our very modest funding to support a wide range of activities that build strong neighborhoods and foster decent lives. Rather than argue that since other jurisdictions have withdrawn their funding, Kitchener should too, I would argue the City of Kitchener should be proud to be taking the lead for relatively little cost in supporting this important service. To do otherwise sends both us and the community the message that our work is neither important nor valued. I find it difficult to believe that this is your intention. and I trust that you will continue to support us in our work of social development and service for the people of Kitchener. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions for Barbara or Trudy? Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you for coming in and giving your presentation. So my understanding here within our report is the funding that you get deals specifically with community information services, and you're saying it's not. So I'm not understanding where this confusion is coming from.
Prior to 2010, the annual grant we got from the city supported all of our services. And then there was a recommendation to pull our funding for 2010. And when we came back and had our discussions and laid out all the various things we did, was sort of looked upon as a menu. That's how I perceive it, and say, oh, this is important, this is important. So then it got defined as community information service. A large part of what we do is information referral service, and also creating resources that are made available to people so they have information packaged in ways that are meaningful to them. So gathering information, sharing that information, and helping people use that information is the core work that we do. Traditional community information service as a telephone answer service for information referral is a component of that. But we've been working for a couple of decades to integrate what had been traditionally social planning and community information as separate kinds of things. That lays out a foundation for integrated information and data so that regardless of the type of question that comes to us, we can pull together what's needed to respond to it, whether that's an individual looking for a service and a referral to address an issue, whether that's somebody who's wondering where the fireworks are for a particular long weekend, or a group coming forward and wanting to do neighborhood work. So for us, it's a continuum of service, and that information is a huge part of it. So part of our information service is responding to questions, responding to interest and needs that come to us, and supporting that, packaging information, responding like the publications that we do, online resources that we've created, that as the technology has changed, we're able to do a wider range of things that are available so people could do self-service if they need to, or we can pull off quickly to be able to provide to people. So that's, and we don't want to limit it to what was the type of service as it was called in the 60s and 70s, but it still is very much information service.
Okay. So it's my understanding that the region of Waterloo is paying the Social Planning Council of Cambridge over $250,000 to maintain a community information database similar to what you guys are doing. And so are you planning to maintain your own, or are you planning to use theirs?
Well, it's the region's database, and they wanted to move it from having an annual grant, because we are an independent organization with an annual grant. And when they moved it, they had an RFP, and we were disqualified from the RFP because we, from what we could understand, that we were still maintaining and then providing the resources that they needed, much as we do with all of our clients. That they have a separate independent, my asthma is bad today. That we have, they've created a duplicate database that right now is not available the way we need it. They had promised that database would be available in machine-readable form for us to pull into our internal systems so we could support the work we're doing. And until we know that can happen, we need to maintain our resources to be able to provide support to the clients that we have. And some of those are contracted. So and we emphasize this with staff, and we emphasize it here. City of Kitchener dollars have never been used to maintain that database. City of Kitchener dollars have been used to support the service component of what we do. It's not the database, it's what you do with the data and how you support people with it.
Okay.
That is the service side.
So, like, how much does your maintaining your database cost your organization on a yearly basis?
Well, not $250,000, that's for sure. We had our budget for all of our data and research is roughly $140,000 in our previous years. And that includes research, and that also includes data development, so developing new tools and resources. The actual database maintenance we have equivalent to 2 staff that have done that based on the inclusion criteria that we had. And we have, again, none of the funding that we have from the City of Kitchener is going towards database management. And so the funding that we have, the dollars we have to support that right now are coming out of fee-for-service work and other dollars that we generate through other ways. Excuse me, I'm really dry.
Okay, Councillor Ioannidis, if you have any further questions, you're going to have to queue back in.
Okay,
Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, thanks. So what I'm hearing is that you do community support services. One of the community support services that I see that you've been doing over the last number of years that I've been a councillor is working with the Festival of Neighbourhoods, right? That's a pretty big component, is it not, or not? Or what percentage of that would be your...
Out of what?
Out of your total work that you do.
Thank you very much. We have applied roughly $10,000 to $13,000 a year from the city's annual grant to support us in the work we do to support Festival of Neighbourhoods. Plus, we're the coordinating partner. So the coordinating dollars is about $8,000 that will come, and additional grants that we might get and other funding that we get to support the festival, that we're the keepers of the grants.
Okay. So you've probably read the report and you've seen that there's a shift in funding for the Kitchener Festival of Neighbourhoods. Does your staff, any of your staff, work on the Festival of Neighbourhoods now?
Do we what?
Do any of your staff work on the Festival of Neighbourhoods now in terms of coordinating, any of those kind of things?
Yes, we do the coordination.
You do the coordination, okay. So, in reading the report, what is concerning a little bit to me is that you already do the coordinating, you already have a staff person, and in reviewing the report, we're talking about adding a staff person to the city to do the work that I believe you already do. Would that be, did you read the report? Did you understand that component?
I didn't understand it that way because it was like taking a portion of what was...
Okay, we're dealing with the Social Planning Council of Kitchener-Waterloo.
Right.
If we're going to deal with the Festival of Neighbourhoods, we're going to deal with that next.
No, I can see that, Councillor Galloway-Seelock, but I want to understand what the work that the Social Planning Council has done with the Festival of Neighbourhoods. What kind of funding cost would that have been for you guys? I mean, you just said 10 to 13 and 8 for the coordinating.
Yeah. It depends on a large part of what our base funding for our participation in the Festival of Neighbourhoods is to support staff like myself in the planning. We had always provided the location for coordinators to work from and then helped as a partner. Plus, we sponsored the Neighbourhood Connections Award, and depending on how much time and effort that took. So oftentimes when we actually calculated out, we were subsidizing Festival of Neighbourhoods for a considerable number of hours a year, because when we had all the base operations there and calls came in and we needed to go and do outreach, well, we'd say, well, So your 5 hours is up this week. You can't do that. We can't operate that way. So we have been sort of filling in the gaps.
Okay.
Because $8,000 for a coordinator is not a heck of a lot.
No, that's true. That's very true. Okay, thank you. That helps.
Councillor Snyder?
Thank you. One of the requests for funding is $24,183 for a part-time social planner to help convene community forums. The purpose of these forums is to engage wide public discussion on issues that community members have asked for more opportunity to explore. So once those forums have taken place, where does that information go?
Well, we compile it and we hopefully share it. Back, we will create reports and post it and send them out, and then use that as the basis for further discussion. This year, we established the Community Social Planning Council. That will be a body that's it's citizens who will be the place where we'll have further discussion as to where do we go next with some of this work and some of what we've learned.
And in past forums, has anything come of it as that we can see concretely that has made a difference in the community?
Well, it gets folded into where we set our priorities and what we work on. So, for example, there's projects that we have followed up on that we're doing further work based on what we've learned. Most of it, you may see some policy advocacy that will come out of it. There's been a fair amount of that related to poverty and to disabilities and human rights and responding to that. Not much has come directly to this council because we've been focusing on federal and provincial. And right now, I mean, I'd have to sit down because the threads are kind of continuing, and we have a number of issues that never seem to go away. You don't just sort of fix them. So participating in the Festival of Neighborhoods, continuing on with digital literacy, focusing on, help me here, poverty, as being some of the examples of work that we have continued to work towards because people keep telling us they're important, and we follow through where it seems feasible and is manageable for us, and also where there's partners that are interested. As an individual organization, we don't have the resources to go running ahead. We really need to be working with partners. And so it depends on the readiness of various partners to pursue even some of the advocacy initiatives.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Marsh?
Thank you, Barbara and Trudy, for coming in. I want to ask you just a little bit about the budget, which is on our page 7-94. I'm just wondering if you could help explain the difference between the actual budget for 2015 for payroll, expenses, and benefits of $167,901, and then to next year, your budget, you're hoping to pay out almost double, $295,000. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, if we look at 2014, our payroll costs were $280.
Okay.
That would be what we would be aiming for, and if we had a social planner on staff, that would be reflected there. So this is a budget that's reflecting the revenue asks. It's not reflecting the actual known revenue.
Okay.
Right. Our two biggest costs are staffing and premises.
Staffing and premises.
Staffing and premises are the biggest costs.
Okay, great.
And so our staffing costs are balanced with the actual revenue that we get.
Okay. So it sounds like the organization is in a bit of flux, right? Because you've changed your name. Tomorrow you're launching a new other social planning council that's a community social planning council. So it'll be a little bit, it's still, we'll see how it lands to see what, what the roles are of the staff versus the community, social planning council, and I'm still struggling to understand what that will look like.
That council would be like?
What it'll look like, what's the difference,
Right now, it's quite fascinating. It's a group of citizens that come from very different perspectives, and it's the first time that we've got a single group that we'll be able to bring the trends and the priorities that we hear from the community in the forums and other places to come and have some discussions about, okay, where do we go? Right now, it's coming from staff and what we recommend.
And when did you decide to shift to this community-based council? Was it as a result of some of the changing in recommended funding, or is it different, separate?
Of course, funding is always at the top of our minds. But really, it was about, I think it was about 6 to 8 months ago.
Oh, it was much longer
much
than that.
longer ago.
I've been around
than that,
longer.
Yeah, it's been in your head for a long time. But in terms of actual board action on this matter, it's been within the last year, and it's definitely a response to what we have perceived as a need for much more structured and ongoing community input. We get wonderful community input from the community forums that we do manage to host. And we had one on Thursday night that you were able to be at, Sarah. And that one was focused on the results of the kitchen table talks, which we ran over the summer and early fall, 14 of them, which enabled us to sit down with groups of neighbors and friends and talk in very, I think, meaningful ways about what's the nature of a decent life and what do neighborhoods need to do to support and create decent lives for those members of the neighborhoods.
Exactly, and
that, for example, I'm going to use this as an example of what is going to be taken now to our community social planning council, who are going to explore this in considerably more depth. So the outcomes of the talks and the outcomes of the forum on Thursday night to advise us on what action now needs to be taken.
And that's where the funding comes in. If we don't have the resources, then we need to make hard decisions.
Absolutely.
And to have that anchored. We've had such good luck with the community committees that we've established, the Poverty Free and Disabilities and Human Rights, in terms of ongoing and capacity building and empowerment, that building that kind of structure has been how we've wanted to move. And hopefully it becomes a really good anchoring point for the issues and the future focus for what we're doing.
Okay, so I'm sure my time's up.
It is. If you've got one more quick question, though, you can go for it.
I guess it's going to be more of, just, be more of a comment later. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Verbanovich.
Thank you very much, and thank you to both of you for coming in today. Just want to further clarify, and maybe this is a question I'll have to ask of staff, but there just seems to be some misunderstandings around this piece of what the funding was for, because having been around for a while, have some recollection of the discussions back a number of years ago, and I do remember it being that the transition was away from core funding to specifically the information service. And what I'm hearing now is you're saying, yes, that's what was picked, but that's not really what happened?
No, not quite.
Okay.
Can I respond to it? That is what's happening. What those dollars are done is to support the information service, but we're trying to label it differently so we can refocus and rebrand. We support the inquiry service. We support the preparation of material and resources and pulling it together, and the development of new products and technical development that we need to do. For a couple of years, a lot of those dollars were spent in modifying the content of the database for 211 and they compensated nothing. So that came out of, we roughly have parceled it out into 30 to 40,000 for the information service, and about 10 to 15 for development work, and that includes developing new resources, and about 10 to 13 for Festival of Neighborhoods. And the numbers may vary a little bit, but that's how the grant has been used.
Okay. And again, I think I will ask for clarification from staff in terms of their understanding of it, but if council were to accept staff's recommendation, either next year or maybe in a phase-out methodology, wonder if you can talk a little bit about, if you weren't doing that information piece anymore, what would your services likely transfer into? What would you focus on going forward?
Well, as a social planning council, with the kind of tradition and history of social planning councils, they don't do direct service. And the community information component was a direct service, and still is. One thing that we have learned, and why we've retained that as a real core component of our work, is because it's a very important starting point for people who don't know where to turn. And so we will always have phones for people to call, someplace we hope for people to walk into, and we're always wanting to be responding to inquiries that come to us in a ways that meet the professional standards of practice for the community information sector, which are fairly good standards of practice that we wouldn't want to back away from. So whether we're funded for it or not ends up introducing issues as to how much of that we can do, or how much stable staffing we can have to do it with.
Now, just in terms of the information, in terms of being a place where people who need it can come to, is it fair to say that other organizations exist and also make some of that information available? So I'm thinking of the Working Center as an example, or some of our other social service organizations in the community?
It depends on a lot of things. We have found that we've done training with other agencies and helped them use resources that are available, or to create resources that work for them internally. So a lot of that, we consider that part of our service as well. Typically, though, there'd be a fee attached. So, of course, everybody answers questions, but are they trained inquiry counselors? Not likely. Do they understand the process of information referral counseling? Not likely. So there's a capacity that is not there, nor is there necessarily the mandate. I know organizations will always be helpful to their clients and want to be as helpful as they can be. But sometimes if they've got screening or intake and they say, we don't do that, that's the end of that encounter. So our ideal is that everybody who's a contact for people in the community can be a well-informed contact. And that's part of the service component that we're offering. It's not the public part, it's the part that we have organizations that we work with directly to assist.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you. I think there's been a lot of good discussion that's been had, and information that you've been able to kind of differentiate between, of course, yourself and the new Social Planning Council of Cambridge and North Dumfries. So the biggest difference I see is, of course, not the maintenance and collection of data, but also the intake. So you referred a lot to the intake. How many individuals would you say, sorry if that was in the report I missed, I looked through it, couldn't really capture it, that your organization is able to assist? Walk-ins and phone?
Phone? Including web?
No, not.
Well?
Let's leave those out for now. Like things that are direct contacts.
Direct contact, yes.
Last year, and I can pull out the number, but it's about 7,000.
And
that
that's...
we assist directly through phone or walk-in or email or...
difference between walk-in and phone? Do you have
Well,
that?
somebody walks in.
No.
No, the number
number.
difference.
I don't have that number. Certainly in terms of our Connect KW computer, we have 40 to 50 usages a month. And then there'd be other people that come in. We're not storefront, so it's a little harder to find us, but we do have people.
Right, I visited your office, and I thought the same thing.
And our web access to the information resources that we provide is over 600,000.
Right. Now, with the staff recommendation with the reduction and phasing out in 2 years, what would happen to your organization the first year if this is approved as recommended?
I need to work that out as a senior manager. With a reduced core budget, I have to plan for a reduced core operation.
Would you still have a mandate? Would you still be able to be operable with the reduction 50%?
No, we wouldn't be able to staff to that extent. We couldn't even provide the training and supervision to volunteers to do that. We would have online. We'd have to really sit back and rethink what are we doing. The core resource base that we have can respond to a wide range of situations and responses. So the biggest thing for us would be in staffing and in premises.
No, I appreciate that. But again, the staff recommendation is giving a different projection to council as to the direction that we should take. And the reduction to the grant by 50%, you're saying that would change considerably your scope of operation.
Definitely.
So if that's the recommendation that we're heading, are you saying all or nothing pretty much at this point?
Well, as an organization, and the president of the board can speak more to that, but the president, the organization will continue. What we do and how we move ahead is going to be dependent on what core resources that we have. We certainly would not be able to sustain until we got to replace those dollars. And we've done really, really well in replacing dollars, but doing things on a fee-for-service basis that we have to go through. Who are we going to charge and what are we going to charge them? And when do we charge? And how do we...
And those kinds of discussions and decisions all take core resources. And I mean, it's very difficult to do the kind of planning and decision making that's required in an organization like this, which, as you can understand, is very complex in its operations for such a small organization. Without that core.
And we've gone over that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all the questions that we have for you.
Thank you.
Okay. I do want to turn over to Mr. Regier and Mr. Younger here to answer some of our questions. I believe they've been briefed around what those questions look like just with the chargebacks. So if we can turn to you now for some of that explanation. And again, at the end of the day, let's just try and get that overview. If it's a bigger issue that we need to deal with another day, let's do that versus spending a whole lot of time. We're already pretty far behind. So, Rod, did you want to go first, or Jeff, do you want to? Rod, go ahead.
Yes. So this is a standard practice, the charging of fees for city services for closing roads and setting up venues and that sort of thing. It's been a policy of the city for many years. We discuss it periodically at council through the budget process primarily. In this particular case, Jeff is more familiar with the details. I would say that if council wants to take a look at this from a strategic point of view, it would take a little bit of work, and we would need to do a bit of homework to prepare something for the this budget year, but and it would have implications for operations budgets because there are significant costs involved for the city to manage some of these services. So I'll hand it over to Jeff to give you the overview of this issue from his perspective.
All right, you're up.
So I wasn't here for the beginning portion. Is there a specific question
I think the questions just were more with regards to chargebacks. I know one of them had to do with special event staff, some had to do with security, and just the whole gamut of lists that they had, that the Blues Fest had with regards to some of its operations, security, parks, waste management, event staff. Those are a few that I wrote down that had significant chargebacks.
Okay, so the total chargebacks that I see on the budget that I have in front of me is about $20,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that, as you mentioned, covers everything from event staff, waste management, custodial, which would be cleanup at the different sites. Waste management would be the dumpsters that are on site to put the trash into. Parks operations for cleanup in the park throughout the festival. Any FM charges that were itemized in here, that'd be to specifically drain the fountain for the licensed area that we have for the festival. Security, that's additional corporate security that we have on site that's requested by the festival. Street cleaning, garbage, pretty self-explanatory. Traffic and road closures and bollards is probably one of the larger line items, and that would be everything from the emergency no parking signs that we put in the parking spaces along King Street. It would cover the removal of the bollards, the poles along King Street to get those out so we can create a larger footprint to be able to get the stages in and whatnot. Staffing for those operations folks, pylons, fencing, all that good stuff. And then another item that was in here was additional parking passes that are requested by the group for the city lots.
Okay.
And when that's all factored in, that's where the...
And those are pretty standard chargebacks across the board, like level-wise?
They are. They're not
cost-wise?
unique to the Blues Festival. The costs over the years have remained relatively consistent. They might go up and down a little bit, but they don't change drastically to the best of my recollection.
Okay.
But these are charges that we would see for every event, whether it's a Cruising on King, that's a city-owned festival, you know, a Kids Park, a Blues Fest, a Rib Fest. They're pretty standard in terms of what would come back to us.
Okay, I have two people in the queue. Mayor Urbanovic, is it questions of this item or next steps? Okay, Councilor Ioannidis, is it of Jeff or Rod with regards to the specific one? Yeah, yes is the, yeah, okay.
Addressed.
Okay.
It's just, I just want to see this issue pursued further. So
Okay.
I don't think this is the appropriate time to request that. So I just.
So you're requesting information to be brought back to a future committee date with regards to chargebacks?
Well, I think yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions that we appear to have for you. So thanks for bringing us that overview.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you are next in the queue. We are ready. I'm going to try and prompt this along.
Yep.
So
No,
we're ready
absolutely.
for motions. We're ready to move forward. I do say if you have comments, please keep them to a minute because we are really far behind at this point.
Yep.
I said if you can keep it to a minute, please do. I'm not trying to cut discussion off, but let's...
Just one quick question of staff, and I really want to understand better from their perspective because there seems to be a lack of clarity on this issue of what we were funding with respect to the Social Planning Council and what we stopped funding back in 2010 and what we believe we've been funding from a corporation point of view. And I think these organizations each sign agreements and so on. So I'm wondering if staff can provide some further detail on that.
Mr. May?
Through you, Madam Chair, I've just asked Mr. Chapman to put on the screen a schedule that is part of the annual Tier 1 agreement with the Social Planning Council that I think is will give Council some clarity in terms of where the city's Tier 1 grant has been going. So if you look at the bottom three bullets, this was my own note, so my apologies for the pink, but the bottom three bullets are really those are the specific services the city's Tier 1 grant was to be funding. And this is part of a grant agreement that is signed by the Social Planning Council and myself every year. And so I think this gives clarity. To Councillor Fernandez's point, I want to note the bullet in the middle about Festival of Neighborhoods. It's not staff's recommendation to reduce that. In fact, it's staff's recommendation to continue to provide the Social Planning Council with that grant. As you also know, we're recommending basically doubling the operating funding for Festival of Neighborhoods. And I would not be at all surprised if some of that funding made its way back into the Social Planning Council and some of their staff to help support the event.
So just to be clear then, it's that top item fundamentally that staff, and part of the bottom one that staff are saying there was a tender process at the region. The Cambridge Social Planning Council was successful with the tender, and that same information we are now going to be able to get through the region for free that we've been getting through this.
So through you, Madam Chair, yeah, it's the two items highlighted in pink that staff are recommending be phased out over 2 years. And as identified in the staff report, it is our belief that other investments made by the municipality, the region, and the province over previous years has achieved much of what's been done through this grant.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Marsh, question, comment? I just need question. Okay. Councillor Fernandez, question? Okay. I'm coming back to you. I'm just trying to... So, Councillor Fernandez, on this one?
On the empty space, but so we were not doing questions on empty space. We're just doing questions on Social Planning Council.
No,
right?
you're the only one left in the queue right now, other than Councillor Marsh for comments. So,
okay. Since Mr. Regier is here and he was integrally involved in in assisting with the review around the centre and the square, there was a comment made by Maggie earlier today regarding performance space and the Conrad Centre. I don't know if you were in the room at the time. You were, okay. I want to understand how we can assist smaller theatre groups like Empty Space and Lost and Found Theatre, and we have numerous small theatre groups that are doing wonderful work, but they're being hampered by the inability to find appropriate theatre space, performance space. How can we work with the Conrad Centre? And I apologize, my question first should have been, who owns the Conrad Centre?
Point of order, Councillor Davey.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to belabor the process, but we are way behind, and that is a very, very important question, but it is not related to whether we grant them additional funds or not.
Yeah, it is. For me, it is.
I will allow, I appreciate the point of order and where it's coming from. Mr. Regier, if you can just answer the question around the Conrad Centre and who owns it.
Yeah, through you, Chair Galloway-Steelhawk, the Conrad Centre is owned by the Conrad Foundation, as far as I know, and the arrangements for its use are determined between the foundation and the KW Symphony. So Majdi has put his finger on an important issue. The issue, I think, if we take it up to the 30,000-foot level, is around the availability of performing arts space in that size category and at affordable prices. So it is a larger issue. Unfortunately, we have no authority over the Conrad Centre, and it's entirely a matter of the operating framework that's been established for the symphony.
Okay, I appreciate that very much. Okay, my last question is about duplication in efforts around Social Planning Council and city initiatives. We've been really working towards festival neighborhoods and community building, something that I've always understood the Social Planning Council did an awful lot of work around, and especially when they mentioned the kitchen table talks. So I want to understand if it would be better to to continue having a separate entity doing that kind of work than to have initiatives that are staff directed. This will help me understand whether how we should continue the funding for Social Planning Council.
So through you, Madam Chair, I would say that the city is uniquely positioned to lead the neighborhood strategy work because there are a whole lot of partners working on our neighborhoods. Social Planning Council is one organization. I think of the United Way, the KW Community Foundation, Waterloo Regional Police, the Fire Department. I mean, there are hundreds of groups. And so the unique position the city is in is that we can connect all of them and work together. And that's why we're the right organization to be leading this. Ms. Wilms can correct me if I'm wrong, but going back some time, there was a specific and deliberate, I believe, decision of council to get out of that community engagement funding for the Social Planning Council. That is when you specifically said, council specifically said, we want to put our funding to the bullets on the screen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, Mayor Verbanovic has suggested he has a motion. I'd like to get that on the floor. Get that on the floor. Councillor Marsh, you are making comments, or if there's anybody who, I obviously want to take a look at this, but if anyone wants to make any changes, let's get those all out on the floor now so we can all make our comments and we can move on to finance. We appreciate everyone's patience in running over at this point in time. We are getting to the meat of it now, so the end should be near. Mayor, go ahead.
So if I can speak to this, and I think the clerk can figure out how best to mix it in or work it in with the existing motion that also talks about all the overall amounts on page 7, on page 7-1. But what I'm doing is taking a look at this from a 2-year perspective with respect to the Social Planning Council, and also looking at, I think, a number of things that we've heard today that are looking for additional funding, as well as trying to make sure we continue to support some of what the Social Planning Council continue to do. And then I'm also trying to address the empty space request. So in terms of 2016, as a result of the reduction or 50% of the social planning funding, my suggestion would be that 10,473 become an increase to Festival of Neighborhoods Tier 1 operating grant. So that would actually continue to fund the work of the Social Planning Council around Festival of Neighborhoods, which I think we all feel is very important and has seen great success and needs to continue working. 12,326 would go to Kitchener Blues in 2016 as part of the increase that they were looking for. And a reallocation of 9,000 from Tier 1 grant funding would then allow us to create a second Festival of Neighborhoods grant, which in year 1 would be worth $10,000. As council will recall, back a few years ago, we increased Festival of Neighborhoods from 10,000 to 20,000 because neighborhoods were finding they couldn't do what they needed to do with 20,000, with 10,000 rather. And so this is creating a larger one and a small one for year 1, and then in year 2 we would actually get it up the rest of the way. So then in 2017 we would see Kitchener Blues get, as the remainder of the Social Planning Council grant decreases, the Kitchener Blues Tier 1 grant would increase by $11,799. The second 10,000 would go into the Festival of Neighborhoods Capital Grant. And one of the things we heard in budget was that the City's Leisure Access Card program is seeing additional pressures that in 2016 were fine, but in 2017 that's questionable. And so that's an area that I think we do need to continue to make sure we support. And so it would see a portion of that program funding go into that. Then we get to the issue of empty space, and I'm suggesting that we would increase empty spaces funding by $10,000 annually, but we're asked staff to report back how that can be done. What appears to be the case is that we could simply reduce community grants Tier 2, but staff may have another idea, and so I'm suggesting that they would report back for council next Monday on how to do that. If we did simply do a transfer, it would mean that it would have zero impact on the budget. So all of these would end up being budget neutral. And if I can just briefly speak to it.
Can I just ask you a quick question? Because I think one of your numbers may be wrong. The increase to Blues Fest, is it supposed to be 12,326 or 12,306? It's only a difference of $20. I know that, but I just.
It could be. I might have made a calculation
I
error.
think it's supposed to be 06, just
306,
because you were
okay.
taking it from the increase to Tier 2 grants.
Yep, that's
so
fine.
I think it's supposed to be
Thank you for
06.
catching that. If I can just briefly speak to this. I mean, it's always difficult when we've got various competing issues that we need to deal with as a council. And it's difficult because, part of these actually is dealing with a significant reduction to one organization, some of which we're putting back with the Festival of Neighborhoods funding. But for me, where the fundamental point lies is, as I think we've heard from staff and as the operating funding agreement would suggest, we would be double funding something that we are now going to get for free from the region. And as much as I understand that's going to create some challenges for the social planning, or now called the Social Development Centers organization, I can't in good conscience see us continue to do that. If the Social Development Center comes forward in the future with a new proposal that Council should consider as part of Tier 2 funding, I'd be very open to considering that at the time. But I don't think we can continue funding something that the region has now taken over and are going to offer to us and to our ratepayers at no charge. So that would be the recommendation I'd like to move forward along with the other parts that are in the report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marsh, you were next, but you've keyed out. So, okay. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure I understand this. I just have one question, I guess maybe of staff to clarify. Mayor indicated there's no impact to the budget, notwithstanding the final clause, the handwritten clause. And what would the total encumbrance be for 2017 if this is approved?
Mr. May?
Through you, Madam Chair, if I'm understanding the Mayor's motion correctly, there's no impact to the budget. And what I would recommend is, if I'm understanding the intent of the motion correctly, you will want to take recommendation number 1 first, because that includes the reduction of the Social Planning Council grant. And if Mr. Chapman and I are just quickly running the numbers on the motion, it does appear that what the Mayor's done is increased other grants by the same amount as has been reduced for the Social Planning Council.
Okay, very good.
Just so I understand, procedurally, I have to do the first clause on the recommendations, then I can do the second clause, and then I can do the mayor's motion that just changes everything. Is that correct, Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you certainly want to take the first clause because that will set the bucket.
Okay, and then we can deal with it from there, depending on how that goes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit. First, I want to address what I'm seeing here. So, number 2 says increase the Kitchener Blues Festival Tier 1 grant by $12,000, and then increase the Kitchener Blues Festival Tier 1 grant by $11,700. So that's in 2017.
Yeah, so one's in
doing
2016 and one's in 2017.
Right,
so in
gotcha.
essence, it would give them.
That's what I missed. Should have highlighted that in pink.
In essence, overall, it gives them about $24,000 more.
So my concern with this, or what I'm worried about, is that we're going to see funding removed from an organization that has done fantastic work in many, many, many years. Notwithstanding the discussion about whether it's database information or not, I know that Ms. Boland has done great work within the community, and I fear for that work and the demise of that. But I also see when I'm reading this report is that we're considering hiring a part-time festival coordinator, and I don't understand that. Now, Mr. May is shaking his head, so maybe you need to clarify what
Through you, I'll get used to that, I promise.
It's okay.
Through you, Madam Chair. No, that's not correct at all. What we're suggesting is give Festival Neighborhoods the increase of grant that they wanted, and they will use that money to hire that individual. It's not a city staff person.
So the Festival of Neighborhoods is a completely separate entity and has nothing to do with the city? I'm sorry.
That's absolutely correct, and that's our hope for eternity. There's three basic partners. There's John McDonald Architects, the City of Kitchener, often represented by Janice Ouellette, and the Social Planning Council. So it is a separate organization from the City of Kitchener.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. But that's the kind of work that the Social Planning Council has been doing for the majority of it in partnership with the city and John McDonald Architecture, right?
They've been doing a lot of the work. Renata, did you have something you wanted to add?
Just to clarify, Kitchener's Festival of Neighborhoods is a Tier 1 group as well. It's another group that we're funding through today's report.
Yeah.
And we're just increasing their grant to fund the additional part-time position. They're a separate entity, but they are a Tier 1 organization.
Okay. I guess I'm just not reading this correctly, but it does concern me that we're pulling the funding from the Social Planning Council, and really that's the point I want to make of all of this. My additional request would be that, if possible, we have recorded votes. We also, I think maybe what we should be doing is maybe grouping together the Blues Festival grants, if possible, and then maybe break out everything else into separate votes. I know that's a little bit time consuming, but I think it would be fair for the way council may want to vote.
Okay, I'll consider that. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Madam Chair, just two quick questions on the Mayor's motion. Can I ask those of the Mayor for clarification?
You may ask your question. I may help to clarify, but
You're most generous, Madam Chair. On the empty space one, Mayor Vrbanovich, I presume it means $10,000 in 2016, plus an additional $10,000 in 2017?
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
So, no, what the motion would be is that we would give them 2016 extra, which would become permanent Tier 1 funding each year. So it's 10,000 only in 2016, and I'm suggesting that the place we could take it, but subject to staff giving other advice, would be from the Tier 2 funding. So it would reduce the Tier 2 funding available for the balance of the year from 122,509 to 112,509.
Okay.
And thus have no impact on the budget.
So basically, they get it annually versus a one-time.
I understand. And I also will have some comments on the empty space request.
You better make them now, because this is your only chance.
Very quickly, I'm in support of the Mayor on this. And in relation to empty space, I've already said that they stage some of the best theatre in Canada. We're privileged to have such a group in our community. And we should be particularly proud that Empty Space operates the Impact Festival. That, believe me, attracts international theatre interest to Kitchener, in addition to other symposiums and cultural richness. So I think, along with neighbouring councils, we have to do everything possible to support this type of theatre in our community. And so I would urge councillors to support the Mayor's motion. Thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I think considerable debate has already taken place about the recommendation for the Social Planning Council, and as for the redundancies or duplicity of work that is already out there in the marketplace, other than to say that I support the staff recommendation, which will make available some additional funds, and I support the Mayor's intent on the first part of his motion for 2016. I will ask if it could be all voted separately, so the part for 2016, then the part for 2017, and then, of course, the direction to staff to look at some alternative funding sources for additional increase in funding for empty space. And further point to the motion that's on the table, or by the Mayor, for 2017, I will not support that point. I think it's a good direction that he's heading. It's just that I don't want to tie ourselves for future funding for 2017 year until we have a better objective of the balances of the community needs and requirements at that point. And if we are going to have this additional monies available, this may be an area that we look at that point, but we need to look at that more comprehensively. But for 2016, I would absolutely be supportive of that.
While I'm queuing up the next speaker, can I have staff on the motion on the screen put a number 2, a number 3, and a number 4 beside each paragraph? It'll just help when I'm explaining how we're going to do this voting. Councillor Gazzola, you're up next.
Yeah, I would like to see each one of those voted on separately, if I could.
Just a second, Diane. It's going to be 2, 3, and 4 versus 1, 2, and 3. That's okay. I'm going to, so just so you know, I'm going to do each paragraph separately, and then I'm going to pull out the Blues Fest too. So that's how I'm planning on doing it. So there's 4 paragraphs we will be voting on.
I won't belabor the discussion going on. I'm not in support of totally what's happening with the Festival of Neighborhoods. I don't know where this leisure access card has all of a sudden appeared. I haven't seen anything before today on that. So I would like each one of those items, there's 7 items there, voted on separately.
Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really difficult position when we're hearing, on the one hand, when we see what was voted, what was signed to in terms of an agreement with the Social Planning Council, and then we're hearing a different set of we're hearing a different story from what staff from the Social Planning Council are saying in terms of what they're using the money for. So, and also, I wish that we had received this package sooner, because then we would have had a chance to read it and digest it. I struggle with this, with that part of it, but I do support additional funding for the empty space, especially, and yeah, I'm still trying to figure. Anyway, that's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the comments that we have. So we are going to move forward with this, and I need everyone to pay attention because I'm going to try and walk us through this. So first we are dealing with paragraph 1 on page 7-1 under the recommendation number 1 that says subject to final budget approval, the 2016 grants, and has tier 1 community groups, tier 1 minor groups, tier 2 and in kind. That's the only thing we're dealing with right now, that first paragraph. Councillor Yanetsky.
Conflict of interest.
Okay.
I just wanted to declare a conflict of interest on page 711 dealing with the Kitchener-Waterloo Community Orchestra, as I'm a member of that organization.
Okay, let's deal with that one right now. Do we need a recorded vote on that one? Because if we can avoid that, that would be great. Is everyone okay with that? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, so now we will move to the remainder of that number 1 paragraph. Recorded vote has been asked for, so we will move to paragraph 1. Period. Voting's open. Okay, it's carried unanimously with the one. No, that's right. Sorry, my bad. I'm all confused now. Okay, so we are now moving to paragraph number 2 that's on the mayor's motion. We are going to deal, it's been asked that we deal with each one of these separately. So we're going to do that. We are going to start with number 1, which is the increase to the Festival and Neighborhoods Tier 1 operating grant by $10,473. Recording vote. There you go. Number 1. Just in paragraph number 2, number 1. All in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Now we are dealing with paragraph 2-2, the increase to Blues Fest for 2016. Do you want to stop the vote? Did you mess up? Okay, cancel that vote. We're going to do it again. So again, we're doing 2-2, the increase to the Blues Festival Tier 1 grant for 2016. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Next, we are moving on to paragraph 2, number 3, which is the reallocation of $9,000 from Tier 1 grants to the Festival of Neighborhoods to offer $20,000 and a $10,000 capital grant. You can vote. Those in favor? Those opposed? That carries. Next, we're moving on to paragraph number 3, number 1, which is the increase to the Blues Fest grant funding for 2017. Sure can, yeah. Councillor Marsh.
So if we, like Councillor Singh, wanted to wait until 2017's discussions about the budget, and so therefore voted against this now, would we not be able to vote for it later?
No, you would be. Again, this is just in committee, so if it doesn't pass in committee, it wouldn't move forward to council. Therefore, you wouldn't need a reconsideration in 2017, and I think it's only good for a year, if Colin nods his head. I think each vote's only good, or no, it's a term of council, sorry. So if it doesn't make it to council, then you can bring that motion up next budget year. But these will all be subject to final budget approval.
Okay, thank you.
An individual can change their vote.
Oh, absolutely, they can change their vote. Yeah. Okay, so we are dealing with, they're all subject to 2017 budget. Every budget decision we usually make is in even the pre-clause in this was subject to final budget approval. Okay, is everyone good? We're dealing with 3-1, the increase to the Blues Festival Tier Grant for 2017. Those in favor? Those opposed? It carries. Now we're dealing with paragraph 3, number 2, which is the reallocation of $10,000 to the Festival Neighborhood Grant in 2017. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Now we're dealing with number 3, paragraph 3, number 3, reallocation of $10,000 from the Tier 1 grants to the Leisure Access Card. You can vote. Those in favor? Those opposed? One chose not to vote that's in the room. That will be recorded as a no vote. And the last paragraph is number 4 with regards to empty space. Those in favor? Those opposed? That too is carried. I believe we have moved every motion we possibly can on this. So with that, we are adjourned. Thanks for everyone's patience. 2 minutes until we start finance and corporate services.
I gotta go. I get it. No, let's go this way.